You know, it really is hard work being a spectator. That is true. You are standing on the shore, you're getting water, you're getting sunscreen, you're getting food, you know, you're helping the team out and trying to support at the same time. So it is a long weekend for everybody out there. The sun has been a little bit intense out here, but I have to say we've had such great weather. I think we've been so lucky. And speaking of great weather here at this glassy start, looks like we do have a start of the men's varsity semifinal 1. That is lane 1, Grand Valley, lane 2, GMU, lane 3, Western Washington, lane 4, William and Mary, lane 5, Texas, and lane 6, UMass. And hopefully we'll see some pretty exciting racing here. We do have all boats connected through the breakage point. And let's see if these coxswains can keep steering straight down the line, and let's see who moves on. I'm excited.
And with these semifinals, the progression will be the top 3 boats moving on to the grand finals, the remainder to the petites. And early on, like Whitney said, we still have a lot of connection between these crews. So, you know, it's sure to shake out. The only thing, we've got one boat that's maybe a little bit off the pace, but at this point, there is no clear leader. I mean, it's going to be very close right now between George Mason and University of Massachusetts for that lead spot. But again, we come off of the start line with a whole lot of excitement, a whole lot of adrenaline, really, really high strokes. And as the crews settle down into what we call their race pace, sometimes a whole lot changes. So we'll take a look a little bit farther down the course to see if we can shake out placement for some of these crews, because it's actually gotten even a little bit tighter as I've been talking.
Now, if you don't mind, you did talk about moving into that base pace, and we've been talking about that all day. But what does that actually look like? So once we have a nice start, we're at a pretty high rate, we've blasted off the line, and we're kind of getting settled into that middle 1,000 or so, maybe a little bit more, depending on when you settle. What does that transition look like?
I think that transition looks like power. So the effort and the focus has to be on not only maintaining your speed, but more power. So the start, you know, you can't really rip the blades through the water and expect the boat to respond well. It really has to be all about lightness and quickness. And then once you settle down into that base pace and get into the stroke rating that's going to fulfill the body of your piece, it has to be about power, finesse, and just being as effective as possible. Because like we've said, this is a long race. And, you know, tapping into both energy systems, you've by the third 500, by the second 500, you've tapped out of your aerobic energy system, and you're just working on your anaerobic, whatever is left over. So it is all about power right now for these crews. And I think that, a good coxswain, a good crew, a good coach is going to focus on being as efficient as possible.
Absolutely. And the cool thing about that is there are so many ways to do that too. Some crews do it over a progression of 5 strokes or so. They kind of bring it down and power up a little bit, bring the stroke rate down, and power up a little bit. Some do it in, 2 strokes, in 1 stroke on this one, and they really, really transition quickly. Now, let's go back to our leaders here, because we have got 4 boats across and one boat, that is really starting to set themselves apart a little bit. We are looking at William and Mary in lane 4. That is our leader right now, but not by much. By then, now we have 4 boats across. It's looking like, gosh, I don't even know who to give it to. Grand Valley, maybe? Grand Valley? But not far behind. Kick in.
Yep. So I was trying to write down the placement so that we could kind of, take a look at the screen and not have to look down at our heat sheets. But as I was doing that, the placement completely changed. So William and Mary out with that early lead, followed by Grand Valley with GMU right there, George Mason University in that 3rd place position with Texas and Massachusetts. So we are just coming up to the 1,000-meter line. Again, coming into that third 500. That is really what separates out a lot of these crews. And, again, as the excitement and the adrenaline kind of calm down, we really get into the truth of their fitness and the truth of their power. So we're going to see exactly what happens here. But right now, William and Mary holding on to that lead. All right, this is a little bit interesting. We kind of called one of those boats totally incorrectly, but William and Mary definitely with that lead. Really, really tight here between George Mason and Western Washington. Texas also right there, and University of Massachusetts. Grand Valley just a little bit off the pace in the sixth place position. But I mean, look at what this is heating up for with those top three boats to advance to the grand final. William and Mary doing what they can to hold on to that lead and hold off a charge by 4 crews, all on either side of them.
Now, the cool thing about these varsity fours, too, is whether you have a smaller program or coaches decide to prioritize their four, more clubs have the ability to have very strong fours. So it makes these races typically very exciting to watch. And we're seeing that now as we come into the last 200 meters or so.
That's right. And those, often these are the top 4 athletes in the program. And we're seeing that right here. I really want to point out George Mason University. I mean, what a sprint. William and Mary have held on to that lead, but they have watched it shrink as George Mason is just, really putting on a clinic here as to how to be the most effective in that sprint. A little bit of a bobble there in those a couple of those strokes. But George Mason, and then with Western Washington in third. So close here, these final strokes. And you heard the finish line horns. Definitely very, very competitive here in these final strokes. So William and Mary with the win, followed by George Mason, and then Western Washington. It's going to be Texas for the 4th place position, University of Massachusetts, and then finally Grand Valley. All right, and we are already at 1,000 meters gone in the second semifinal for the men's varsity 4. In lane 1, Pittsburgh. Lane 2, UCLA. Lane 3, University of Rhode Island. Lane 4, Vermont. Lane 5, Boston College. And lane 6, Northwestern. Okay, finally getting these boats coming into positioning here. 500 meters to go. We've got Vermont as your leader, sitting just a few seats over University of Rhode Island. The 3rd place position is going to go to Boston College, rowing out of lane 5, with UCLA in 4th, Northwestern in 5th, and then finally Pittsburgh in 6th. So coming into the spectator area, you're going to be able to see a little bit closer action here as they wind it up for their final strokes. This will be the top 3 crews moving on to the grand final, the remainder moving on to the petites. So it's going to heat up here in these final 250 meters. Will it be Vermont? Will it be University of Rhode Island? Vermont just barely holding off University of Rhode Island for that top spot. We'll see what happens here as they hit the red buoys. Final 250 meters. Great racing up front here as Rhode Island and Vermont push each other towards that finish line. Rhode Island now overtaking Vermont for that lead position. So again, we're going to look at an awesome grand final tomorrow as these crews go after each other and really test their speed out in this semifinal. It's already pretty much, I mean, this is such exciting racing. We've got these two boats well out in front. Behind them is UCLA now pushing themselves into third, but we're going to keep our eye on Boston College all the way down to the line. So close there between UCLA and Boston College for that final qualifying position for the grand final. We'll see what the official results say. And then for those final two spots, it will be Pittsburgh and then Northwestern. But indeed, UCLA getting into that grand final with a third place finish.